What is going on, everyone, and welcome to the Spurs Pursuit. You're joined here by me, Martin Frank, and I will be taking you through the latest Spurs news updates from this week. And as you can probably tell, there has not been a Igor Tudor press conference yet. That will be coming out today. And Tottenham Hotspur have also not kicked the football yet. However, you have a lot to be excited for because it's been a turbulent week already for Tottenham. In fact, that football has not been kicked yet. So let's get right into it. Let's mention briefly the Igor Tudor press conference. There are two main things that Tottenham Hotspur fans will be looking at going into it. Number one is, of course, the availability of Jed Spence and how his injury has progressed. Because it was just a bit of soreness in his calf. So we'll have to wait and see how serious or how unserious that is. And secondly, it's his approach to the press conference, because his post-match interviews have been much more depressing, much more ruthless, I would say. It's been very close to him exploding. An already noticeable difference between the first press conference between the North London derby and the second one before Craven Cottage was Igor Tudor already seemed a little bit downbeat. So it will be very interesting to see, taking on training sessions this week after the Fulham defeat, what his approach is like. And so I'm very, very interested in what is new with Igor Tudor and his view of Tottenham Hotspur going into the clash tomorrow at home against Crystal Palace. So let's dive right into the news that I've brought for you. So Spurs are in active search for a new sporting director. This was reported by Matt Law on Monday. There are two candidates that have been thrown into the mix of a pool of larger candidates. The first one being Dougie Freedman. Dougie Freedman is known for his time at Crystal Palace, bringing in the likes of Mark Gay, Michael Olise, Ebret Chieze, Chris Richards, Adam Walton, and so on and so forth. However, he currently operates in Saudi Arabia at a club named Al Diriyah as a sporting director after leaving the Eagles last year after there were a few mismatches between himself, the board, and also the manager Oliver Glasner. So he is more likely to be seen as open to a move back to London than is the former. And let's get on to the former, and that being Paul Winstanley, who is currently operating at Chelsea. He's been involved in two major managerial decisions at the club. First one being the introduction of Enzo Maresca, and the second being the introduction of Liam Rosenior in recent weeks. Now, if we mention the former manager Enzo Maresca, that means that he must have been involved in the departure of Mauricio Pochettino. So, with that being said, it would be very interesting to see if he does make the trip back to London, or, well, he already is in London. Let me rephrase that, to North London from West London. Because if you've had a mismatch, or if you've had some sort of tensions between the possible candidate to replace Igor Tudor, then what are we speaking about? Is it realistic? Is it not realistic? However, his time at Chelsea, of course, with their spending habits, they are more likely to land successful deals, but it's been very successful. So let's mention a few names that have been added. João Pedro, Garnacho, Cole Palmer, Moises Caicedo, and recently Estavio as well. So a lot of big names introduced to Chelsea that have been successes. However, we must take into consideration that Paul Winstanley is less likely to leave, and focusing on the former Scotsman, Dougie Freedman. One thing has to be said is that he more operates in a similar role to Johan Lang, where he's very successful in picking out upcoming talent, and to have him as a sporting director next to Johan Lang, whether Johan Lang will still be in a job come summer, is very controversial, to say the least, to have two figures that operate in a very similar manner. But as I've mentioned, it's a pool of larger candidates that are still being assessed, so it might not even be the neither of the two mentioned. However, it is interesting to know that Tottenham Hotspur are actively looking for a sporting director, of course, with the departure of Fabio Paratici in January. Moving on to something you probably, as a Spurs fan, have caught up with, and that is the academy coach who goes by It's Coachman on Instagram, who made some interesting comments and an interesting controversial post. Now, this academy coach is clearly very talented after landing a job with the Tottenham Hotspur Academy. However, he has made it open that he is an Arsenal fan, and he has bantered online with his friends about the difficulty of wearing a Tottenham badge on his skin. Now, this was taken out of proportion, definitely by a lot of Spurs fans, understandably, because of the situation that we currently face ourselves in. Now, since then, the academy coach has put himself on private on Instagram and also posted on his story claiming that it was just a joke made with his friends, but you cannot be making such jokes on the first week of your appointment, showing disrespect to the club that has employed you. It has infuriated Spurs fans, and rightly so, because recently Tottenham Hotspur have had Justin Cochrane, Thomas Frank, Vinay Venkatesham, and even a few players, including Dominic Solanke, affiliated with with Arsenal, and being seen as their fans or boyhood club. So of course Tottenham Hotspur fans are going to be infuriated, and to disrespect the club so early on and be a sort of role model for the children that you'll be coaching, it's unacceptable, and there has been action taken by the club, unknown to what extent that means, but potentially it could be being fired, and that would be very, very interesting to be fired on your first week of your job after making such stupid comments. Moving on, we've got Tottenham Hotspur players face a 50% wage cut if relegation occurs. And boy, oh boy, is that not a surprise, is it? With Daniel Levy's departure in the summer. However, all the contracts being made so far by him, bar Conor Gallagher, so that Daniel Levy imprint has been left at the club. He has made sure whatever situation happens, the economy of the club will be always as a priority. This means that, for example, players currently earning over 150,000 a week, the likes of Christian Romero, James Maddison, Conor Gallagher, Xavi Simons, would all be on less than 100,000 a week if such a situation occurs. Of course, all the players mentioned would very, very unlikely remain as Tottenham players come the summer of such a situation. But it is definitely interesting to see Daniel Levy's, hindsight movement, his typical businessman approach. And that's been reflected in the way that we've been run for the past 25 years, whether that's his reflection or the reflection of his co-owners, the Enoch, or the Lewis family, should we call them. And that is the next point of discussion. Change for Spurs, if you don't know, they are an open arena base representing Tottenham fans, making sure Tottenham fans get what we want, and that is success on the field as well as off it. They sent a letter to the board, and with the spiralling trajectory and poor investment, respectively, no adequate signings to bolster the relegation battle due to the incompetence of the board in the January transfer window, and the idea of seeing the fans and players completely disjointed, with the players poor on confidence seemingly visible, with a lack of desire and a lack of passion. There is growing uncertainty and a lack of direction that most Spurs fans seem confused with at the minute. So Change for Spurs has taken upon themselves to answer multiple questions, and the two main speaking points are, of course, that if Spurs were to find themselves in the Championship next season, it was asking about recruitment, investment, and also revenue. Now, also, there was one more question asked by a Change for Spurs, and that was whether the board are confident they would retain the supporters. And if so, how? Because if a situation like relegation would occur, the Tottenham fans would be absolutely infuriated with the way that the club has been run. And I personally believe there would be a massive conversation to be had about selling the club if Championship did happen. So that was also mentioned by Change for Spurs, whether it's not the right time to sell the club. It will be interesting to see their response to this. So now the club face a very difficult dilemma, because how do they respond to this? The individual responding might not even be in a job come relegation due to their negligence of the Spurs fans and the Spurs squad. Change for Spurs also made a statement this morning claiming they've been delighted so far by the response of fans to their request, and they urge Spurs fans from abroad to have their say also. So if anyone is interested in questioning the board, feel free to reach out to Change for Spurs on X for further instructions. Now, next up, and this was a report made by Ben Jacobs via TalkSport, and it's Pochettino and Championship football, which is incredible to be speaking about in the same sentence. Championship and Mauricio Pochettino. However, it's been reported that Pochettino would still be willing to return to Tottenham Hotspur after his US men's role ends in July, even if Spurs were relegated, which shows his determination and loyalty to this club for some unknown reason. He really, really loves the club, and it's beautiful to see, even though he is a former Chelsea manager, which must be stated as well. And just for this sole reason, he should be considered the primary candidate, which he already is. Because many managers, including Roberto De Zerbi, will look at relegation and see that as an absolute no-no. And it would leave Spurs in disarray to have a manager come in that loves the club, that knows the club, in, let's say, the Championship. It's insane we are speaking about this, but it is the current reality of the club. It would be refreshing. So maybe a spiral into the Championship could see Tottenham Hotspur benefit in the long term, because it would definitely see a very, very large conversation spike out in regards to relegation in selling the club, because the Tottenham Hotspur fans would be so infuriated. There would be major protests, and there would be no chance ENIC would be able to hold their seat comfortably, because they've been very lucky with certain decisions always going their way. Maybe again it will fall their way that Tottenham Hotspur out of the bag pull out 2-3 victories to rescue relegation, and again what will change? Nothing. So maybe relegation would be the best option for Tottenham Hotspur going forward. However, from an economical standpoint, we of course know that would not be the case, because putting you into Championship sets you back so many years from a financial point of view, whether that's your best players leaving, whether that's the sponsors, the revenue being reduced. It would be a big blow. So hoping and praying that Tottenham Hotspur remain in the Premier League this season. And that brings me on to another letter from Spurs, from the actual Tottenham Hotspur account to PGMOL, specifically to the chief operator, Howard Webb. Now, considering Peter Banks' interesting comments live on Sky Sports, he had claimed that he had enough evidence to blow for a foul on Gabriel Magalhaes after Kolo Muani had two hands on him. And Tottenham Hotspur have reacted to this with a letter questioning why the same decision twice has not benefited Tottenham, including Liverpool's Ekitike and his goal standing, and also Fulham's Jimenez just this Sunday with the same situation and the goal standing. Also, it must be stated that Tottenham Hotspur and Aston Villa are the only two remaining Premier League teams to not have a penalty rewarded for them this season. With Tottenham Hotspur, it does make sense why we haven't got a penalty, considering the lack of touches in the box. So to actually get a penalty, you actually have to enter the box and get one. So that's a topic of concern maybe for next time. However, the letter does make full sense, because we've got 3 separate decisions, and all 3 have been against Tottenham. So it will be interesting to see Howard Webb's response. Of course, such things like PGML or FA have plenty of time to respond and react. So we could be seeing a response maybe in 2-3 weeks' time during the international break. So don't get too carried away with a recent response. Speaking about Tottenham being active online, so we've mentioned the academy coach, we've mentioned the letter from Spurs to PGMOL. Let's touch upon one more situation, and that was Premier League. The official Premier League account had put a video up of Guglielmo Vicario's amazing free kick that went to absolutely nobody. It's circled online, and for the fact that a Premier League account itself should be neutral, should be professional, to upload something belittling not only the club but also the player, it was quickly deleted after Tottenham Hotspur had been in touch with the account regarding the issue. So a lot of things have been going not Tottenham's way, and it's just Wednesday. The only thing that is going Tottenham's way so far is the results, because Leeds United lost yesterday, meaning Spurs are still 2 points in reach with them with a game in hand. And today we will see West Ham and Nottingham Forest take on Fulham and Manchester City respectively. So let's be hoping both teams lose and Tottenham Hotspur are able to capitalise, because next week we play Atletico Madrid. And if we are in a relegation battle, nobody is going to be interested in that Champions League performance, because we will be so worried about different things. And to be 7 points clear next week, we can all focus on the Champions League campaign as well. So just I wanted to make that clear. And lastly, for today, a quick update is Spurs become the 12th most profitable sports team according to Forbes in this calendar year, and just the second most profitable football club in the world. Just 1 million behind Manchester United. So I will share that on screen right now. So as you can see, the only teams ahead are not related to football. If you look at Manchester United ahead of us, it's literally just by 1 million. You see Arsenal behind us by 9 million. By 11 million. No other football team is on this list. So it all comes back again to the situation that Tottenham Hotspur find themselves 12th overall, second in sports teams, in football teams. Can you imagine what relegation would do to these owners? I guarantee you anything will be done to ensure that Tottenham Hotspur do not go into the Championship. You have to remember Daniel Levy is still affiliated to the club. He is still an owner of the club, whether that is a minor stake owner, it doesn't matter. He's still an owner of the club. The Lewis family, they are major stakeholders of the club. They cannot afford relegation. So there have also been reports about Igor Tudor and potentially coming under huge pressure if he doesn't secure a result against Crystal Palace, and that is so understandable. Can you imagine Tottenham Hotspur losing tomorrow if West Ham or Nottingham Forest win today? Can you imagine if Tottenham Hotspur do not capitalise once again on drop points from the teams around them? There is no chance that Igor Tudor will still be in the seat come international break in 3 weeks' time if Tottenham Hotspur are unable to win a single game of football, meaning Crystal Palace, Liverpool and Nottingham Forest. If he loses all 3 games, we will definitely see either Ryan Mason, Harry Redknapp or someone affiliated to Tottenham, maybe that's even Tim Sherwood, to come and save the ship, because the owners they will do anything, they will do everything in their power, whether that's sacking another manager 1 month into his tenure. They cannot afford relegation, because that would most definitely mean one of 2 things: selling the club, which they cannot afford to do, as you can see by this graphic how much profit they are gaining, or number 2, a downward spiral, because no one guarantees that you are able to get out of the Championship straight away. And even if you do, you have been pushed back so many years economically due to revenue streams that I cannot imagine the situation at the club. Anyway, that's my whole update for now. I will be back with an Igor Tudor update and a predicted lineup. So tune in for me in the evening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for going through the whole thing with me. And as you can see, Tottenham Hotspur never fails to disappoint. There's always something to speak about. So I am wishing you a lovely rest of the day and see you in the evening. Come on, you Spurs.